huge crowd tonight. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Lake Bluff Board of Education Committee, the whole meeting for January 13, 2015. And filling in for Christine, Julie, if you could please take the roll call, I'd appreciate it.
I'd be happy to do that. Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlo. Present. Julie Gottschall. Present. Richard Hegg.
Present.
Christine Lettinger. Absent. John Rosen.
Present.
Susan Ryder. Present.
So we have 6, we have quorum, we can begin. We will begin with the opportunity for public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please feel free to do so. And in the future, if anybody would like to come to a meeting and address the board, please feel free to do so. You can also reach us through our emails on the district website. The third item on our agenda is one that we include all the time now, is asking the board or anybody in the audience if they think we should be adding an agenda item to future agendas. On there now is the enrollment added to the board planning calendar. That's something that's come up several times. We're going to be talking about that. One item that has came up last time about budgeting contingencies, we will be talking about today. And we're also going to add to in the future an agenda item about fundraising and the board's involvement in setting policy on fundraising in the buildings. Was there anything else?
No, I was just going to, well, what Mark and I decided over break is just to memorialize what's discussed at meetings so that you can see your agenda items show up until it's been discussed. So the actual enrollment we have added to the board planning calendar, so we're discussing it at least 3 times of the year. I think it's August, again in October. We always discuss it at this time of the year for staffing. So those 3 times minimum, except for any other time that you ask. So you won't see that under the addition of discussion items again, because it's on the board planning calendar. The enrollment project is still ongoing. Jay and I are meeting actually on Thursday to look at how much more information we need. So that will remain. And as Mark shared, the other item was the budgeting and contingencies, and that's on the agenda for tonight.
And we're going to add a future agenda item to discuss fundraising, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything else that anybody wants to get on the future agenda?
No.
No. Okay. So moving on, we'll move right to discussions. And item A is the 2015-2016 student fees proposal that I believe Jay wrote a note on that. Is Jay going to lead us to that?
I am going to have Jay lead us in the discussion for student fees and building use fees.
Okay.
Go for it, Jay.
Jay Connor, Director of Business.
We took a look at some of our comparable district fees, and as well as our fee history over the course of the last many years, and looked at what some of our costs are and have made a recommendation that you see in your packet on fees. We have up on the board some of our comparable districts and our recommended fees for next year. We are recommending to hold fees relatively stable as we have in the past, to increase our main material registration fee by about $5 each for each grade level, which represents about a 3% increase for inflation, as an inflationary increase. And then we have been charging a technology fee in 5th through 8th grade for laptop computers of $50. We want to keep that the same, but introduce a $25 technology fee for the other grade levels. All those grade levels are also one-to-one and have use iPad devices, which have costs of maintenance and upkeep, and so that fee would be to help with those costs. But the fee structure, the fee philosophy is really to charge a fee for things that are supplemental to the program, so that the district can provide these services that are kind of above and beyond, and help to defer our costs for things that are either optional or for materials that get consumed.
I think the other thing to point out on here, which again we're bringing, this would be, I think, the 3rd time we're bringing this. We are recommending that we don't charge for transportation again.
Thank you.
And I think that's an important decision that we need the okay on to move forward along with the other fees, because we're getting ready to start registration already for our kindergartners.
As I understood, most of the transportation costs are covered by the reserve of the transportation budget, correct?
Yeah, we do have an excess reserve. We're working on transferring that reserve to other funds where we can use it by levying less in that fund and levying more in other funds. But we do have money to spend in that fund that we've levied for transportation over the past many years.
I have just kind of a general, broader question. You talked about the philosophy behind what you're doing. Does what you're bringing to us now represent any change philosophically from what we've done in the past?
No.
I think the only change Jay's already mentioned, and we went back and kind of checked on when did we start charging technology fees and what was the philosophy behind that. And we were told the philosophy was that it applied to grade levels where the kids had one-to-one. Since that time, we've added so many devices for the young ones, we felt that it was time to introduce a fee for that and keep our technology fee level for all the other kids.
So it's not really a philosophical change, it's just an implementation of that philosophy.
Correct.
Anybody have any other questions for Jay or Jean? Do you need any direction from the board on this?
No, we're starting finally to get in our routine that we're going to really try to get everything to you for discussion at the committee of the whole meetings, so that we can bring it for your approval at the regular board meetings, and then that part will go very fast.
I guess I do have a question on the philosophy of charging fees at all. And I don't know that I'm not advocating necessarily for a change in that, but I understand a band fee, a milk fee, fees that are for optional activities. Why, if every child is issued technology, is there a special fee for that? Why isn't that just part of the overall tuition?
Well, I can tell you what I was told in the past when they started it, and then we could talk a little bit about our funding now. When the time that they brought it in, they felt like that the kids that were actually using the one-to-one and where there would be damage, we had to hire the two Apple certified people to actually maintain and work with the laptops. That at that time, I was told that the decision was made in order to cover those costs, they introduced the technology fee. At this particular point, we'd have to make a really big adjustment if we did not charge technology fees. And I think our big piece is that there are accompanying costs when you issue even just the iPads. We have maintenance on them, sometimes if they, repair costs, other things that are built in. And that's the thought behind fees.
Mm-hmm.
I will also share, though, every year, usually in August or September, there's articles in the Tribune about why do school districts charge fees for students. So it is philosophically an issue that sometimes boards want to work through. I've also been told from people in the community that sometimes one group of people in the community don't want to fully provide technology for the kids as far as paying the total cost, that the parents should really help out with that piece. I've heard that from people.
As opposed to spreading it across the whole tax base.
It across.
Fees in general have that purpose behind them, that the people who are benefiting the most directly from the service bear a higher burden of that cost, so that you're not charging it to all the taxpayers. If I'm a student in the district, then I'm going to pay a little bit more than this family who doesn't have a student in the district.
That's another reason behind it.
You could make that argument about books and desks too, though,
Right.
Well, and we do charge for books.
We charge for books.
Desks. I mean, not desks, but consumable materials, books, and things
I
like
mean, calling it a technology fee is really just a way of marketing the fact that we're increasing the fees for families to pay. In my book, it's all.
And see, that's another way. Some districts, as we were looking, just charge one fee. And even though the technology fee goes up, they don't really share that. They just say our fee's going up by X amount, but they know that in their budget it's going to technology. Ours breaks it out.
Just out of curiosity, how much do we collect in total?
I'd have to look.
I would guess
$100,000.
$300 a kid times 700. I figured it's about $225,000.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Knowing that it differs for each grade level a little bit.
Right, and we do have some students who have fees waived, but and then the programs that are not required, such as preschool and kindergarten, bear a much higher percentage of the cost of providing those programs.
So, this is most definitely the dance floor, but I'm interested in a couple of the fee changes. Just the track used to be $65, now it's $100. Whereas travel sports was $90, and now it's $100, so it's only gone up 11%, and track has gone up 40%.
Usually those are entry fees into different meets and different,
I see.
and bus costs, which would be the same for both.
It's also, I think track,
It was not a travel sport.
it was not considered a travel sport even though it is. I mean, it's more to simplify it so that you don't have a different fee for every sport.
Yeah, well, in my experience, the track is much less involved.
Track is a shorter season.
Shorter season, not very much coaching goes on at all. It just seems like I don't know, there must be a reason that it was much lower.
Probably.
In my experience, I received a lot less from it when I was a consumer of track services. So maybe we have changed.
And sometimes sometimes it's the league that kids are in. It's the entry fees to get in
Yeah,
certain
maybe it's
leagues.
changed since it was last in
There
track.
was some note somewhere where it talked about moving into more of a travel sport than it
I
is.
see.
Yeah,
That's
well, it just
true.
had its own
That's when they're also-
classification by itself. So this was an attempt to try to streamline it a little bit and not have so many different fees, but just if you're a sport and it's travel
Yeah.
sport, it's one fee. If you're
Right, I
travel
understand,
sport, it's
but I
not
do
travel
think
sport,
it's
you know.
treated as a different type of level of commitment. You know, oh, I might go to one track meet, not all 6 of them. I think there was a difference, and maybe there's been a change. The other thing is, I wonder why Encore is so much more expensive than jazz band when they're both 2 days a week.
And that is something that
3 days. 2 days.
the people who were running the programs were setting the fees in the
Okay.
past, and they've been those fees for years and years and years. And so I didn't want to. I'd like to have one fee, but to say, well, jazz band now you're going to be
Yeah.
twice, I didn't think was something that I
Maybe
could
it's the
change in 1
outfits.
year.
They have outfits in jazz band, or in Encore. Maybe it's the outfits.
They do have outfits,
T-shirts.
and they
So the school is buying those outfits?
the school has bought them, and that's why they're always the same outfits.
We pass them on from year to year?
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I just noticed that they don't fit our dress code. So the fact that we're paying for them concerns me.
I know that
Well, it's part of the fee.
I know that they pass on the uniforms year to year.
So if we
Because they
replace
have
them,
not
maybe it'll be
changed. They
an
have not
opportunity to
changed.
do something that fits the dress code.
Right. They have not changed since I've been here. So,
Kind of gross.
They do.
You know, it seems to me that as technology becomes more prevalent and everybody now has some piece of technology that perhaps it isn't so appropriate to segment it out. It now is like books, like I would say chalkboard, but I think that's antiquated too. You know, whatever it is. So I just would say that's something I'd be receptive to further discussion on. At the same time, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So if there are no complaints, then I guess we carry on as we have. But I do know as a parent, I've always wondered, why do I now have to write this extra check for something my child's going to be issued in any event? So just food for thought there.
so is that or for you as a board when you give us directive, because you're going to be approving it in 2 weeks? Can we use this year, or would you like us to just give one fee, or?
Have you been getting complaints from the community about it? About fees?
Why make it more complicated? It is a source of income, let's face it, it's $225,000, pretty significant. If it works, not broken, why make it more complicated?
I agree.
Okay. Moving on. All right. Item 4B, 2015-2016 building use fees. Mr. Jacob.
We, in your packet, in the attachment, we had a fee schedule that we've used in the past that had various charges for different rooms depending on the type of organization that you were. And we wanted to try to simplify that. We still need to go back and write a more thorough building use policy and procedure and incorporate a little bit more of a contractual look to it so that we're protecting the district. But in terms of charging fees, I think the philosophy here is that the buildings are community resources and that we want to provide their use as much as possible to members of the community. So we've broken down the different types of groups into 4 different buckets. The top 3 school-affiliated groups, community groups, youth groups, and other organizations that serve our students, and then nonprofit organizations that are also really taxing bodies, as well as churches and charitable organizations, can use the building at no charge. We would just want to pass through any incremental costs that we incur as a result of their building use. If we have to hire a custodian to be on the premises or to clean up, we would pass that cost along at our cost. And then for profit groups that do not serve our students, or any organization that wants to use our buildings to raise money or to make money, we would charge them a fee for that. And I think that the fee that we, like I said, didn't put it in here, we were looking at $50 to $100 an hour for a fee for a for-profit organization
That does not service kids.
that does
in our
not
district.
service kids in our district.
I think the key piece with the history, for the new board members, there was some issue before with some of our community groups that do service our kids in the community. And so, and we really do want to provide the services for our kids in our buildings. So what we decided to do until we could make a decision on it is just charge the community groups that serviced our kids the same thing that we charged our nonprofit groups that serviced our kids. And really that's what this chart has now done. So if there's community groups, and I'm going to use Northwestern because they are now going to start using our buildings for their Saturday weekend classes. And it's not all our kids, but several of our kids are really going to enjoy the services of their program in our buildings. And so we can't do it for free because of the fact that we've got custodial and maintenance costs, but we also want to be able to encourage those organizations to come and use our buildings so our kids can get those services provided in our buildings. The same would be true with some of our recreational organizations that use our buildings. So we really feel that the way it's set up now, it's a little bit more clear as far as executing payment. We have had no issues but the one for-profit group that services our kids. And as long as we're keeping it pretty much what we're doing now, he will be very happy because he services kids in our school district. We feel very strongly, and unless I'm told otherwise, Scouts really only collect minimal membership dues, and we really feel that that's another organization that services our kids, and we don't feel that they should be charged. So
I hear you on the groups that service the kids, and preferable to have them serviced in the school. We should be amenable to that. As I'm reading this memo that Jay wrote, I see no charge for C, and C would be nonprofit organizations, including churches, government entities, and 501c3 organizations, which could cast a very wide net. I guess I don't understand why we wouldn't want to charge some fee for that group, which isn't necessarily
is
servicing
that
kids.
C or D that you're
Well,
talking
I'm
about?
looking at the memo.
Yeah, that's last year's, that's the old form.
Yeah, I'm looking at the new recommendations.
Attachment A is not any longer going to be relevant,
Right.
is that right?
No, that's
Okay.
just
Oh,
a
I
historical
see.
reference.
Okay.
No, but Julie, you're talking
She's
about
looking at
C
this.
now.
I'm talking about
Okay.
C, which under the new construct, there would be no fee charged to those entities. And I would think it'd be appropriate to charge a fee for those entities.
To cover maintenance costs?
Well, certainly to do that, but also it seems like we have had in place a system where we charge just an hourly fee. Again, you want people to use the resource mindfully, so you don't want to charge, but you want So you want to charge some fee so that it's not just an entitlement. We're going to walk in, we're going to use it any old time, and maybe, that gets misused. You don't want it to be so steep that we're not good community actors, but I just see no reason that the school should be open to any government entity or any 501c3 that wants to use it for free.
I think I agree with that. I could maybe live with not charging, but is there a way to allow us the ability to be careful in who we allow to use the building? What if it's a not-for-profit, a 501c3, that represents something that we really don't believe in?
No, I don't think we want to be in. Maybe there's a separate policy for how we pick and choose, and maybe that's appropriate.
And
I
we
need to
have
be
a
careful with
policy in our
that.
packet that we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, a little bit with that, because I want to make sure that we don't discriminate.
I was going to say, like, what if the
It's very important.
KKK wanted to have a meeting?
Well, this is just the fee structure. There's still by policy a priority for use, like Group A gets highest priority, Group B gets second highest priority. You could put the word local in there and just those organizations that are Lake Bluff or, that are taxpayers and have a fee for nonprofit organizations that are not local. You can, but this is just kind of the fee schedule. You can still decide who goes in your buildings and who doesn't, and by some other criteria.
I think with limiting it to the community, we're getting closer to what I would like to see. But again, 501c3 is a very broad category, and they could have all sorts of things that aren't technically for profit missions, but are more or less, not necessarily do-gooder missions. In any event, I just think for any group that's not servicing kids, it is appropriate, just as it's a minimal barrier to entry, so to speak, that we charge some fee beyond just maintenance.
In the past, I wonder if what we're trying to capture here is like League of Women Voters hosting debates.
That and
And do
caucus,
we charge them?
and the caucus, the village caucus
The village
has been using.
caucus. And really those events, I don't think that there's anywhere else in the community they can be held. I don't think anything else is big enough for them to do it unless they
There
use the
isn't.
gym at the middle school or like the lunchrooms.
We had a funeral service, a memorial service, for a police officer that had served in Lake Bluff for years here this year. So, and what Leanna said on is really what I found here. There really is no other facility large enough to host some of these bigger events. And so it's really, it's your decision as a board. I suppose if we were going to cover that Group C, I would probably go with half of $75 or $30.
I don't know.
But
Now it's 50, 35, 35.
We don't.
Like to me, if a church wanted to rent our space to have a festival to raise money for their church, to me, I can see why we'd charge a fee for that.
We
But
have to.
those caucus kind of things, those feel like,
Right.
it's the taxpayers of Lake Bluff.
Right.
It doesn't seem to make sense that we wouldn't allow that.
So is the issue primarily with that line C? If we can kind of
Yes.
narrow it down to that, can we ask?
I don't know if there's another way to word it.
Like a resident versus non-resident. Residents are free, non-residents are.
I'm trying to figure out
Well,
where the interest is so we can narrow it down.
I think it's something that's done on behalf of the entire community, we would waive the fee for. But something that is a more parochial interest, we wouldn't. I think Leanne's given a good example of where we would be inclined to do it with the caucus, yes, but you get, I'll struggle to think of an example, but a 501c3 that has the mission to improve, businesses to go to the loop. Why should we rent them our space for free?
So basically, I'm
And there's
here.
lots of those kinds of things.
Yeah, there's a
We
million
come
of
up
them.
with some language about 501c3 whose purpose and mission is to provide services to the local Lake Bluff, Lake Forest
Yeah.
community.
Community, right?
And maybe originating in the community as well.
Okay? You guys are getting the word originating in the notes, right?
Would you just say
Originating.
local nonprofit organizations? Maybe we just put local in front of at the beginning of C, and then local applies
Then
to
you're
all.
gonna have to define local.
Well,
Well,
no, you don't have to
that
define
may-
local. That's the beauty of it.
That may be enough. Again,
I saw a lawyer in the
do-
audience shaking his head.
Hi, James Lee. You guys are struggling with policies that is difficult to define. At least I get these all the time. So, what's your
Microphone.
He's gonna come out and
You can grab it if you want and just bring it back with you. Thank you. Frank.
Can you sit up?
Yeah, you don't hear yourself.
Oh, I don't know, okay. So you're all doing exactly what I see and trying to define that, and defining what local is right. What you want to be careful of, and board member Gottschall noted it, when you start to have too much discretion in who you want to be in, for example, the KKK or people you don't particularly support their views, if you've opened up your forum, you have an issue. So you need to be careful on how you impose discretion on opening the forum. So it's a fine line of what you're trying to do is define who you want to be allowed to use your facility, and at the same time not picking folks because as much as we disagree with or may disagree with certain viewpoints, because you're a state actor, you are subject to certain restrictions and are not able to restrict certain viewpoints. So you have those restrictions as well.
So we can't say 501c3, et cetera, whose missions are consistent with the mission of the school district?
Well, I would imagine.
No.
It's not bad.
Again, for fee structure.
Yeah, so what you do with the
I think
501c3s is
it's
you can try and limit it to exactly what you're doing, what's local, and it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to have 100%, everything's going to fit in there. But I think that that's a good idea. For example, like Ducks Unlimited is a not-for-profit, and if the McHenry County needs to have 100 people, you don't want them showing up and here and getting it for free.
Yeah.
So you can define it as more of a local scenario, and I think you're going on the right path. I just want to make sure that you don't include in there too much discretion, because once you open that forum, and you will, I've seen folks that have those viewpoints that we don't necessarily agree with bring suits if you exclude them. So just kind of.
Are you comfortable because James and I are going to be working on several projects together in the next month, since he's been, since you've listened to the conversation, he can help with
Sure.
a line to define that category that I could bring back?
That makes sense, but I wonder if we mean to simplify the rental fees as extremely as we've simplified them in the box over here. Because, for example, we're no longer making a distinction between the gym, the multipurpose room, and the classrooms, the way we were in attachment A. Is that what we intend to do? Is $75?
What we're intending to do is this.
No. I know, but so if you're charged anything, you're charged $75. It doesn't matter if you're using a classroom, a multi-purpose room, or a gym. And that's what we intend to do.
Because really, the whole purpose behind these fees is to pay for custodial around getting set up and cleanup afterwards.
Oh, I thought that was an extra charge, 36.
But let's say scouts, we don't charge them, and there's usually a setup and takedown. Let's move into the for-profit groups. Let me think of a good example. If Jean's Basket Weaving Service came in and Jean wanted to rent the multi-purpose room for one of her basket weaving classes for adults, not kids, so it doesn't service our kids, that would be category D. So it's going to be $75 per hour, which during normal school hours will cover our custodial setup and takedown.
Isn't that covered with the pass-through incremental cost?
Because there wouldn't be an incremental cost just during school hours. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's during the time when custodians are normally there. If I wanted to have my basket weaving class on a Saturday afternoon, we've got to have staff come in and open up for my basket weaving class, stay there while I'm teaching the class, and then clean up after I'm done. So they have to not only pay the $75 per hour, but they have to pay the other fee because we've got to pay staff to come in during that time.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So we're trying to streamline it because I will share with you, having been in districts with lots of building use, we have very little building use.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point is, let's make it easy for the people that are using it, that are servicing our kids and our students, without opening the forum or the door or whatever we're opening. And James can kind of write our line to narrow down that group C.
And I think it's appropriate to view our buildings as a community, a
Resource.
place for community,
Right,
a
I
resource
agree.
where they should be able to use
I
it.
completely agree.
Right, but I think that gets back to the point that we want it to be our community.
Yeah.
So
Right,
the
so it's
local should, I think, modify
So
not
you
just 501c3.
You'll get it.
All right.
You'll get it. I have one more question about the same topic. I noticed on the attachment A that we're no longer going by, you had the thing about the insurance policies requirements at the bottom. Are we still going to have those requirements?
Yeah. Yeah. This is just the fees. We'll have a policy that lays out
Good.
what is required in terms of insurance
Okay.
coverage and things like that.
All right. Anybody else? Moving right along. C, 2015, 2016, time and location of school board meetings.
This one should be an easy one. We are convening our calendar committee to start talking about our school year calendar for next year. And while we were at it and looking at our board planning calendar, I just went ahead, since we know who is going to be on our board, and kind of wrote up the draft board meeting calendar for next year, knowing that many of you are looking to plan your vacations for the summer. So I wanted you to take a look at it. I pretty much took this year's calendar, mapped it out on next year's calendar, looked at a couple of the big state conferences where, for instance, Jay or Kevin or I would be gone, and how we have to pay bills, and then what you have is your board planning calendar. So you have your vacation schedule once it's approved.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Questions?
August 25th, the regular Board of Education meeting, is that after school starts?
That's a good question, Susan.
It has been in the past. It's that
It
first
has
week.
been.
I can't answer that because our calendar committee hasn't met yet.
Okay, well, presuming, then I'll reserve the right to object to the 25th if school isn't in session yet.
Well, I know that and we'll have that conversation at the next
It
meeting.
should be.
I'm pretty sure Lake Forest is in session by then too. So I would think yes, but we haven't met with the calendar committee yet, so.
Okay, so we're gonna go through D, and then after D, maybe move up our guests.
Yes, I think, let's go through, why don't you share that and then we'll go to our guests.
Now, or do you want to go through item D first?
Let's go through item D
Yeah, we'll do
first.
that. Yeah, so moving on to item D, certified staffing. Beginning discussion about certified staffing, you guys have information in your board packet. This also has to do with enrollment, and it will also segue into a conversation about class sizes too. And Jean, you gonna lead us through that? or-
Actually, Kevin designed this new sheet, which we're still tweaking. What we're trying to do is come up with uniform forms so that you see the same paperwork year after year. And this is the beginning of our staffing discussion, which we really need to talk through to give us guidance as we look at our staffing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin.
So one of the things that Jean just pointed out is that this is the very, very first run. So there will be several runs of this chart and what this looks like. So in the very first run, all that we are doing is estimating our enrollment based on our current 6th-day enrollment for the next school year. So it will walk through just very, very briefly, and I'm going to skip over pre-kindergarten and kindergarten because those are sort of the X factors right now. Over in the chart, you can actually see grade 1, and those are our current kindergartners. We had 82 kindergartners as of the 6th day of school. That's what was officially reported. You can see under grade 1 notes that the actual class size right now, 83 students is in there, and we have experienced around a 10% growth in that kindergarten to grade 1 class over the past several years. So I would expect that that number will be a little bit higher, but the estimation as of today in the first run is that we would have 82 students. And because we have 5 sections of grade 1 right now, there would be an estimated no change in sections for next year in grade 1. Grade 2, these are the current first graders. They're
Rolled into 2nd grade, so that they know.
or rolled into 2nd grade, yep. There were 100 first grade students on the 6th day of school. There are currently 3 sections of second grade with our current class. And so we would estimate that there is going to be a net change in sections for second grade of +2 sections. Moving on to the third grade, which are our current second graders, we are estimating that we would have 67 students, which is where we started the school year at. Currently in grade 3, we have 4 sections of third grade, and so we would estimate that there is a net change in sections of -1 in third grade.
So you're dropping one classroom, is what you're saying?
Dropping one section of
Yes.
that grade, yes.
Grade, so the part where it gets a little bit tricky is in the grade 4, 5 multi-age, and grade 5.
Can you backtrack for a second?
Absolutely.
So where you have 67 kids projected for grade 3,
Estimated for.
estimated. We're very close though to what we had said we wanted to have as upper limits for class sizes there, correct?
Yeah, what was very informally decided on by the teachers and the board committee that met prior to my arrival, and then kind of reaffirmed, Susan was at that meeting, is class sizes up to about 21 for K1, and then grade 2 was kind of between the K1 and then the upper levels of grades 3, 4, and 5 of anywhere from 22 to 24. So we're almost there, but not quite. I think that a lot's going to depend right there on if any of you give us direction that you think 22 or 23 is too much, because we don't have defined class sizes, but we're like in grade 3 right now, I would say the highest we would ever go would be 24. When you look at our numbers, we're not far from that now. I mean, all you need to do
Right
is
there.
have 2 or 3 new kids. Twins would do it. So
And tell me again what the goal was for grade 1, 21?
grades K1 were anywhere up to 20 to 21. 21 was really where the committee felt that it was way too high.
And I'm looking at Susan because if you recall the kindergarten number maximum was at 18. And my first summer here was when we added that section of full day kindergarten, because all of the sections had gotten to 19. And
The number though is still 20 to 21. It's just something that all of us have felt, along with that committee, that we really want them lower than that. But those were the highest numbers that we would go to. So if you apply that same thought, the highest numbers we would go to in grade 3 would be 24, and we're only a few students away from that.
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
Well, I'm just highlighting it, because it was, although you're remembering a committee discussion, it was something the whole board had talked about, and,
When Ben was here, right? I recall.
yeah, so, it's something that we want to keep an eye on. I don't think it's
Absolutely.
something where we've said, oh, well, if you want to have it go over 24 and just let us know later. That wasn't what we came up with,
Right.
even though it wasn't a hard limit, because you can't do that. It has to be somewhat fluid. I still want us to stay aware of it as the numbers develop.
And I think we're going to have to continue to stay on top of it, because as Kevin goes through this, there's a lot of places where there's question marks. So that's why he said this is the first run on estimates. When we really look at it, it may change 3 or 4 more times before school's even out.
Or 15 more times. And the other sort of caveat to that conversation is that if we were to split grade 3 into 4 sections, we would have a section of 16 and then 3 17s, which would make it smaller than our kindergarten class sizes. So it's one of those things that as we went through it today at our administrative team meeting for the first time with the administrative team and really looked at and started to toss around some of the numbers, those were some of the variables that we were looking at.
And I'm sure grade 1 is almost at the point where it could drop down one, so, certainly looking at the numbers.
Well, but we have trend data to look at for grade 1,
Right,
because
right.
typically we do have additions because people will put their kids in private schools for kindergarten and then transfer them over for first grade, so.
But the point is, every year you have teachers moving from one grade to another,
Absolutely.
so
You're right,
it's not necessarily mean we have to hire all of a sudden at the last minute if we're.
right.
Correct. So as I started to say, it gets a little bit tricky in grade 4 and grade 5 because of the multi-age situation, and so I've done my best to estimate where our class sizes would be for grade 4, 5 multi-age, and grade 5. Overall, what we are looking at there right now, grade 4 is currently 3 sections for the 14-15 school year. We would estimate that that would go down to 2 sections in grade 4 for the next school year. And for a net change of another -1. 4 or 5 multi-age, we would keep the same number of sections, and grade 5 would keep the same number of sections that we're at right now. So the overall estimated net change in sections for the elementary building compared to 14-15 is 0. Now, as I said, this is the first run. The things that you don't see on here are all of the support positions and the pieces that are less tied to enrollment. So, for example, special education teachers are not on here. There's no hard and fast number of people of students on a caseload that we say, all right, now we're going to add another case manager right now. So those are the things that you don't see on here.
I think a couple other things to think about when you look at these numbers is, for instance, it's easy to assume when you look at the multi-age, well, they're older kids, what would happen if we cut a section? The way multi-age works is we have to have an even number of sections because one of the sections pairs up with another section, so it's got to be 2, 4, or 6. Then we get back on the multi-age discussion, which as an administrative team, we're kind of still sorting through. And we could certainly put that on an agenda for discussion at a later meeting also. Another thing which is going to be based on administrator recommendation, and I don't remember what grade level, so that's probably good, but let's assume that it's grade level 4. There are some grade levels where 23 and 24 in a classroom with that particular class of students would be absolutely fine. There's other grade levels, like I look at my older son, his grade level as they went through school every year was that grade level. So, it's these guys. And when they went through, they would add teachers every year because the mix of those kids together just were not a good thing to reduce classes. So, and that's something we really have to rely on our teachers and administrators to say, hey, you know what, that might be one of those classes that Leanne brought up of 22 and 22. Maybe 22 in that particular grade level, we need another section. So those are the kinds of things that we have to go back to admin team and kind of sort through. But I really think what we're looking for is comments like Leanne's. We need to know that, so as we look in here, certainly if you were opposed to any of these items or wanted to give us any direction, now would be the time to do it as we start looking at, all right, which teachers are we going to move from which grade level to which grade level? And we already know that we have a reduction in at least one position, probably 2.
Well, we're not going to give you advice on the granular, what teachers to move between.
But we're looking for class sizes, and I know that, but we need to know.
So the question is philosophically, is there further conversation to be had about the kind of class sizes we have typically had in this town and our commitment to those types of general class sizes in the future? Do people have concerns with that? or want to see changes.
I back what Gene says, because from my family, when it was all teachers, it's not the class size, it's who's in the class. And that's a very difficult thing for us to put arbitrary numbers on. We're just going to have to trust the administration and the teachers to figure out the best way to get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I think this plan looks fine to me. I'm interested in your further discussion about multi-age.
Yeah.
Look forward to hearing that, but at this point, I think this looks just fine.
And we'll bring the proper people when we have that discussion too, because literally we could fill up this whole room and the room would be 50% divided, and there's still a lot of misconceptions about multi-age.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get to the bottom of it.
So I will not belabor any points, but if you look at the middle school, which is on that next page,
Right on the back, I think.
I can envision somebody saying to me in August, when I bring the actual enrollment back, and you're going to see all of the individual class sections and what that looks like, and somebody's going to say, Kevin, you told us in January that we would have class sizes of 17 and 18. Why is there a 24 on here? And I will tell you that I've done middle school scheduling for several years. It is never a clean or easy process. And there are lots of different variables, including math classes that are level at 7th and 8th grade and what that looks like. The Spanish and French classes, those are other variables. So it would not be crazy to think that there could be a class of 24 and another class of 13. That's a wide band, but that's pretty typical for the middle school. Again, overall at the middle school, we are bringing in 106 students in 6th grade, and we are looking to promote 106 students in 8th grade, so it is an even number in, even number out, and we are estimating a net change in sections compared to 14-15 of 0.
Some big changes after next year.
We do, and we started talking about that already too, because we have to
drop
plan.
down to 57 kids next year. Holy cow.
So,
No, not 57. 57 plus half of 68.
right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but okay, what we need. and-
60.
Right, but it's still quite a bit different.
Yeah, it is. Well,
Yes.
this 6th grade class this year, well, you remember, we both have daughters there. This was a small class when they entered kindergarten. The 6th graders only had like 80 kids. And they're up to 106.
Well,
I was surprised by that.
and so, another variable, we have specifically chosen to use the 6-day enrollment numbers because of the fact that it is a constant number. We could very easily, if we had regularly a massive influx of students in January or what have you, start to use those numbers. But the fact of the matter is that we get a trickle all throughout the year. It's not a massive influx. So, certainly we see a greater increase right after winter break because that's a typical time for people to move. But yes, people move in over time. There is a sort of a bigger trend that people move in before they go to middle school. So our middle school class this year, our 6th graders started, they left 5th grade as a class of 87 and they started 6th grade as a class of 100, I want to say.
I think we have 106 now.
Well, that's next year.
Next year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's next year's 7th grade.
Got it. 100 now. There it is.
So,
I think how this is going to play, I'm giving you a little preview of something we discussed that we're going to do at next meeting. Another thing that plays into here is our principals are now spending a lot of time giving building tours for prospective families. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and the time. And Nate always says he's really excited about that because he's going to add more students to his class. And really, some of that is paying off because the parents will say, your tour was so awesome, it was the determining factor in between this district and another.
You get the best tour guide going.
exactly.
So we're gonna, that's a little preview of the discussion for next time. So as long as everybody's okay with these numbers, now it's our turn to go back and start staffing. So we will do that as long as there's not any other comments.
All right, if it's okay with everybody, since we have some guests waiting, we're going to take item G, which is the Stonebridge update, and move that to our next item.
Yes.
That way our guests don't have to stay for all this stuff. So
Drew is
I'd
first.
like to introduce Mr. Drew Irvin, the village manager. Come and talk to us, give us an update on the Stonebridge development on Green Bay Road.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
everybody.
We're good. How you doing?
Good.
Hello.
I will be very brief, and I will do my best to stick around if there's any questions that I can answer to help in any way. I'd be happy to do it. Don't guarantee I have any of the answers, but I'll try. But just a quick update. Procedurally, I don't know, Kevin, if you get any more of that up. But you all have copies of that handout.
Yes.
So, in a nutshell, the zoning entitlement process for a planned residential development within the village of Lake Bluff is a two-step process. There's a preliminary plan review, and then there's a final plan review. The Stonebridge development which is being brought forward by the Roanoke Group, has completed the preliminary plan review. They have a conditional approval from the village board dating back to November of 2014, and which on this is the second gray cell, if you will, there. So that's where they're at, and then they will move forward to go down and go to the Historic Preservation Commission to deal with the mansion and gatehouse and the landscape elements of the plan that are current landmarks pursuant to the existing planned residential development ordinance, as well as going to the Architectural Board of Review to review the elevations, floor plans, and other design elements of the subdivision plan. And then they will also have another public hearing, which is required at both the preliminary plan and the final plan. And that public hearing is, you guys are familiar with public hearings, but it's the more legal side of the process, and offers all the parties, interested parties, opportunities to chime in about the project. Then it will go back to the village board, who is the final decision maker regarding the project. At this point, I would expect any day now from the developer a plan as far as what he believes he will have, documents ready to submit for final plans, a different submission that's more detailed plans, final engineering drawings, stormwater management plans, landscape, all the details for the structures for the property, and all other, I'll call them ancillary improvements, landscaping elements, and so forth. So we don't have those drawings yet, and we don't have a schedule from the developer when we think we'll see them, but based off prior comments, I would expect them within the next 60 days. So get going again with that process. They did have, at the request of the developer, an opportunity to sit down. It's kind of an informal stage, it's not shown here. They wanted to get some direction from the Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Architectural Board of Review on their elevations before they went to final plan. They just want some preliminary comments. You know, what do you think? What do you like? Do you like these elements? Do you like these other elements? So when they develop their plans, they better spend their time and resources. So,
do you guys have any sense when that public hearing is going to be? That PCZBA public hearing?
the best I can tell you is that whenever they submit, we need 30 days to review the plans and have our consultants review those plans. So,
and then you schedule a meeting after that.
yeah. So usually, at the earliest, the very earliest, it would be February. I doubt it's going to be that. My guess it's going to be March.
So how long then before that subdivision's populated and there's kids that may start coming to our school?
So, good question. The developer will tell you it'll be a certain build-out schedule. Like we think we'll sell and build out in 4 years. Sometimes that's not reality, right? As the prior developer found out.
Right.
Development schedule that didn't come to fruition. So it's all dependent upon the market. Right now, I think the current plan shows a 4-year absorption schedule, and the number of students that come into the elementary and middle school. There was a report done that shows that what they believe would be the number of students. I think 5 in the first year, and then it goes up to I think 52, I believe, at full build out.
52 in full.
Yeah.
Like 2019.
So, and it varies. So my guess is not unlike the crazy algorithms that Kevin is doing. They're doing something similar. You know, it's their best guess based off prior projects of similar scale.
Any other questions for Drew before we move on? James is going to be talking about impact fees from this project. What the facts are with all that.
I was curious how they got to the numbers that they did, but I don't know if that's a question for you or.
Yeah, I didn't compare the numbers.
I mean, I know that, but I
Yeah.
thought you might have some awareness of how they.
Yeah, it's not unlike there's been some general tables based on population associated with developments of a certain size home and number of bedrooms that generate a specific number of school-age children, and those go back years ago that were prepared and accepted generally by, and maybe even turn.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There are various studies. Sorry. Yes, that being. To address that point, there are studies that discuss or estimate based on reviews of homes and subdivisions of how many children are generated by certain types of homes, whether they be detached, attached, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom homes. So you can basically use that analysis, and you hire consultants and they'll look at the number of homes you're building, whether they're attached, detached, and then they come up with how many students they anticipate to generate from the subdivision.
Any other questions for Drew before we have James come up?
So we don't know how the numbers are, other than that what James just gave us, but in the documents that you guys provided, there's some estimates of at stabilization net fiscal impact. Am I reading this right? That somewhere between $349,000 and $369,000 a year? Because there's two different estimates, one from Friedman and one from KMA.
Yeah, the petitioner or the Roanoke Group's consultant was Kane McKenna, and interesting enough, you may not find this interesting, but I did. It's pretty common that Kane McKenna is mostly a municipal consultant. So, to buttress up their study, they use a municipal consultant to justify, to come out and say this is what we think the impacts are going to be. So we had the Fox watching the in-house. We hired S.B. Friedman, who is more or less a consultant to developers, analyze their numbers. And so at the price or on the burden of the developers. So that's the good news. But interesting enough, the numbers that are shown here, the KMA numbers were based off their estimates and fiscal impact. S.B. Friedman said they conservatively estimated the impacts in terms of they underestimated the financial impacts, and that they were actually better than KMA anticipated. So they tweaked those numbers to reflect that. But those assessments you're showing they're in that first table. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are accurate.
And so that's tax revenue to the district once you're at the development is sold out, right?
That's not at sell, no. At total, it's a different table.
Okay.
I'll get to that table. If you go to table 9, which is on page 7, and hopefully everybody has this SB3.
Yeah. Yes, they do.
Yeah. So if you look at, there's a total, the annualized, the fiscal impact, there's a sum total of $5.1 million at year 2033.
That's 5 point. Isn't that the sum of all the numbers?
Yes.
Yeah. It kicks in positively in 2019.
It flipped, yeah.
Right, but it's so by by 2033, the annual number will be about $369,000.
2033, yes. Yeah. Right, you're reading it right.
Okay.
Okay.
Going by 2020.
We'll come get you to see if you remember.
So
Instruction per pupil is 9.9, or 9, almost 10,000.
Any other questions? Okay,
but, I mean, you're gonna, I'll let your attorney cover.
Yeah, we're gonna let James talk about. And James, while you're walking up, just so you know, I'm trying to talk James into moving to Lake Bluff. So
Yeah, exactly.
I hope you looked at our class sizes, how
It
nice
all looks
the
very
community
good.
is. We welcome our community.
I unfortunately have to sell my house first, so.
You got a couple of years, Stonebridge isn't it great?
I've seen the numbers of that. Dr. Sophie had asked me to come to just explain the impact fees under the ordinance and how they work in general. And so if anyone has any questions while I'm going through this, please feel free to interrupt. I don't want to tell anybody anything they don't know. As far as you know, there's an ordinance on the books with the village that provides for impact fees. Impact fees are permissible, and they have to be uniquely and specifically attributable to that particular development. So once you have a development in place, the fees that you extract from that developer have to offset costs that are associated with that particular development. Okay. You also are restricted in how you can spend those funds. They're not to be used for any purpose whatsoever. They're restricted by the statute for either the acquisition of land as a result of that particular development to offset the impact, or site improvements. And site improvements include improvements to buildings, as well as other infrastructure, things you may need to do. And that was recently amended by the legislature to include technological upgrades too. So if you have students coming in and you don't necessarily have a classroom issue, but because of all the demands, now you have 100 new kids getting iPads and they're all going to be on your server, and that server's going to be bogged down, those would be a permissible expenditure. So that's how the dynamic works from a legal perspective. There is the right, if the village imposes an ordinance, and that's the key. There's no right for you as a school district to get these. The village has to have an ordinance in place, which they do. Once that's in place, then those funds have to be attributed to that subdivision.
James?
Yes.
Just a clarification for my purposes. And we're talking about fees that are separate from the ongoing tax revenue that we just I was clarifying previously.
Correct. These would be impact fees, and this is not how it works under their ordinance. I'm just to make it easy. Some folks have, for example, when we talk about a 2-bedroom attached, 3-bedroom attached, they just do it by house. This type of house, the fee will be $1,000. This type of house will be $2,000, and so forth. And you just add them up, multiply it out. And that's, again, you take that money because you're estimating 1.2 kids from a 2-bedroom, 2.3 kids from a 3-bedroom, so on and so forth. The formula in the village's ordinance is a little different, and I think there's been discussion about a value of an acre. People have heard that. The way that comes into play, and I'm not going to go into detail on their whole formula, but I was asked to talk about the value of an acre and why that's important. Under their formula, the value of an acre in that particular subdivision impacts the amount of money, if you're going to get cash in lieu of land, which is what you would get in this instance, I assume, how much that donation would be, okay? And under the ordinance, the current value of a, is it 548 now? Okay, under the ordinance that's online, it's a little bit higher.
I'm sorry, 584.
Yeah, exactly, 583,200. And whether or not that's, I'm not going to opine whether that's right, high or low, but that's what the number is currently, at least by ordinance. So that's how the value of an acre of land comes into play, because that value is multiplied in this formula to come up with how much money you're going to be getting. Okay? And as was discussed earlier, there have been some studies by both the developer and by the village to ascertain what the impact would be on the various taxing bodies. And one was done by Kane McKenna, which is the developer. Another was done by the village. They basically coincide. They both support the Kane McKenna came up with numbers, and the villages basically said those are correct. In fact, a little conservative, as was previously represented. So at this juncture, as the ordinance is currently drafted, you are entitled to those fees that's currently there. And whether or not or how much those fees are is going to depend on how many students are generated based on those reports, and you go through. So if you have concerns with respect to certain issues like the value of land, for example, you could get your own valuation of what you think of what an expert thinks and submit that, or you can rely on what has been previously determined by the village, or if there's other appraisals, if they're reevaluating it, which they have the right to do, work on that way. So at this juncture, you sort of need to determine, do you want to rely on what's out there currently and work within the framework?
Right? We have the developer and the village have both come up with the value of the acre of land, or they're the ones doing the studies.
Well, there's two studies. Neither one of the studies talked about the value of land.
Okay.
Both of those studies, the first study by Kane McKenna was an analysis of what the impact of the particular subdivision would have on the various governmental bodies in Lake Bluff. And it went through school district, elementary, high school, village,
Park district.
Park district, exactly, and went through and had this analysis for everybody. And then the village, doing their due diligence, went and hired someone to review their proposal, the developers. And so that's what those two reports have done. Those reports have said, how is it going to impact both financially and, in your respect, student-wise, how many students are going to be generated?
That's the fiscal impact study.
Correct. Now, whether, and I don't know, I haven't been privy to any other appraisals which would be needed to determine that issue on a valuation of an acre of land. So right now, as we said, the value is the 584. So, okay, so yeah, certainly.
Real quick.
So, piece of information, and maybe you don't not aware of this, but so the developers challenged that value of land because it was set back at peak market, and so the village is reviewing that. Their challenge of that, they've submitted an alternative appraisal for the value of 1 acre of property, and the village is trying to ascertain what is the right value. There will be another appraisal done that will, we believe, follow the ordinance and find out what we think is the true value of the property. I'm sorry, 1 acre of developable land.
So really, it's.
So that's what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. So because of what we get for impact fees is partially based on the value of the acre.
So that's a variable in the formula that has a big determining outcome of what the actual total value is.
Because it's important in this, and because it's already being challenged by the developer, and then you guys are coming in and saying, getting your part done. One of the options we have is to also hire someone to do their own study, which, how much did you say, James, just in general dollars, how much that costs?
General appraisal for a small commercial or industrial is usually $3,000 to $5,000. So, I'm sure that yours. So, and if they're going to go out there and do the whole thing, and be talking, 20 or even 20 to 24. Yeah. Okay.
So 20 to 20, and we're just talking general because we haven't done any estimates.
No.
Whether it's worth our while to hire someone on behalf of us to go out and try to determine this value of the acreage of land. That's one of the questions that we're going to have to decide as a board if that's something we're going to do. That's what James was referring to.
So the village's ordinance.
Why are we getting involved? Why would we do that?
Because
you
it impacts.
have the right under the ordinance if you wanted to, just as the developer does.
Right.
Just as the developer does to say, I think that's too high. You guys have the right, the board has the right to also present their own evidence and say perhaps it's too low or whatever, support
Because
that.
it impacts what we get.
Right.
But everyone's impacted. The park district's impacted.
And they also have the right to do it. So if everyone has the right to come in and do that. So
That's
if they
what we
wanted
have
to,
to bring
if every taxing body wanted to come in and present to the village board, remember the orders correctly, they can, it's kind of like a mini hearing, and everyone can present and do it.
I don't know if it goes.
But ultimately,
in fact, it doesn't.
But it's something we do have to bring to the board.
Yeah, what it says, the ordinance says, is that if there's if there's information that the affected public bodies can provide with regard to value, determining value, the board will take that in consideration when they make the final determination.
Drew, can you talk to the logistics of what happens when you've got 2 or more different valuations in hand?
Yeah.
What's the next step for you and Roanoke when you guys have those different 2 or 3 different appraisals?
So hopefully there's 2 appraisals. And again, going back to the point John was making, that don't our objectives align, right? At the end of the day, yes. So, so the village board will take information that the park district will provide, the library district, the other affected parties, and look at that and say what makes sense. The ordinance calls out that the board will consider a certified appraisal. I mean, that's the first thing it calls out that they should consider when determining what the actual value is. Then it's other information that they may deem appropriate. It's at the complete legislative discretion of the board, so they can say, we think it's 600 million, because that's what we think, and then we'll see in the court. But it needs to be based in a rational approach, because presumably if somebody's willing to challenge it now, that they will challenge it later, because it's the cost of doing business. It's a very expensive one.
Is it the total village board that makes that call, or is it one of the subcommittees?
It's the board, the village board is the authority on that.
So that would, and we're going to come back to that decision. I think James has part 2 of impact fees and what their analysis on it? Drew, thank you for clarifying that.
And then also in your packets is an opinion letter that we wrote.
I just passed it out.
Okay. The purpose of that letter was that at some time there was a request as to what were permissible uses for the impact fees. And that's, as I stated earlier, that you can use them to acquire land or site improvements, and site improvements include, improvements to those buildings, technological, other site improvements, water protection, whatnot that needs to be done as a result of the particular impact. So that's being shared with you, and I believe that was also shared with the village at some point. I can tell you, even though I didn't write that letter, I had a conversation with the village's attorney, nice gentleman. There was real no disagreement over the letter, that those are permissible expenditures. So
Who
that
polices what you end up doing with the money?
well,
Auditor.
there's a couple ways. The way the ordinance is drafted is, you're getting $100,000. The $100,000 can be in escrow held by the village, and depending on how this is working, I'm just assuming that the village would hold it, and then you'd work together and say, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and they would make sure that it's compliant with the ordinance, and it would flow through. I mean, they could also just, other municipalities give you the money. There are cases out there where the money, let's take the village out of this, developer pays $100,000, gives it to you, and you buy something that they don't think is appropriate, and they sue and say, we don't have the money back because you used it for an improper purpose. It was supposed to be used for ABC, and you bought a helicopter or whatever you did. And so you didn't need it.
Don't start that rumor.
Number two.
Thanks, Greg.
So maybe that's, yeah.
No, I mean, that's right. And I just want to go back to the idea that, what's important with the impact fee ordinance is, there is a mechanism for revenue to capture what your needs are through the levy for the school. I mean, that's your primary source of revenue. The village has sales tax and property tax and other sources of revenue shared in the state. This is a one-time opportunity to capture fees associated with that incremental impact of a development and that new population in the system, whether it be the school district, the village, park district, etc. So it's that incremental impact that you have to communicate that this is in fact the impact.
Which the cash flow was negative the first couple of years, so it kind of might help offset some of that, right?
It's not supposed to be for operations, though, right? So it's a brick and mortar, so that's the issue. And so you have to communicate, and that's what the village, and that's the short story is that the village board would love to hear what is the impact. We get this information from the developers, consultant, the village consultant, so if you can communicate that to us, and I think Gene's going to work with you all to get that to us, is what is the impact, so that we can take that information and the board can consider that as part of this process.
And that's a good lead-in that I want to tie in for you as a board, and then I'm going to have James talk a little bit about how and tie this all together for us. When you think back just to the last agenda item on class sizes, one of the things that I hear repeatedly in this community is people come to the community for the class sizes, the school district, and the wonderful community feeling. We do have capacity in our building for 52 kids, both buildings. The question is, though, to continue to keep class sizes at the sizes we're at, you've seen the numbers, okay? At our elementary school, every bit of space right now, because we've added our early childhood program, we've got our pre-K program, every bit of space is being used.
So let me make clarifications, because when you say capacity, you're talking about like the fire marshal says you can squeeze this many people in the building, so we have that kind of capacity, which is a different conversation from our philosophical conversation about classroom size. Very different thing.
Very different.
Which leads us to the whole brick and mortar.
Because physically you could squeeze 5 more kids into that class, but
do we want to?
Should you?
And so I get back to, after really reading the report now several times and talking to James, I think we have to think more brick and mortar. If we were to get 52 kids and I'm just going to say elementary school, the chances of that happening all in one school are slim, but let's just pretend. The chances are likely for, if we keep the class sizes of where we're at, and you've just seen them, we would probably have to add a couple classrooms. And so that's brick and mortar. So that's an impact. And that's something that the village is looking for from us, that I'm gonna be working on with Jay, with the elementary staff, with the map of the building, and with James to get something together so we can give that to the village. Because we know from the letter, and the letter pretty much talks to us a little bit about exactly what the ordinance says and what we can spend it on. And we know that there will be an impact, which is a little bit different than what the report says, and we really have to be clear as to what the impact could be. Then James is going to kind of wrap this up with the conversation with the village attorney, because there are going to have to be some discussions between the two groups. But the other thing I want to emphasize is, as Drew talks, Drew benefits from impact fees too from the village. So it's not to his advantage. His advantage is he needs the value of the acreage of land to be exactly where it should be too, because they wound up they get money down the road too from what comes in. So all of our interests are the same for the community. We just have to work together to sort through how it's all going to play out dollar-wise. Am I saying that okay?
Yeah, I think that's accurate,
Do you want to talk a little bit more about the letter or the talk with the attorney, or?
I guess just to follow up, we had that letter went out to discuss that. And again, I've had one discussion with the village council, and we were both on the same page with respect to how the money is spent. And as Drew had stated, the real issue is that valuation of an acre, because that's the key component on determining how much, at the end of the day, the cash in lieu of land is going to be. And so I think at this juncture, the board needs to do twofold, and as Drew has requested, the board needs to articulate how that impact comes into play in various levels. We talked about that a little bit and saw that a little bit tonight. And then, I guess, decide whether or not you have the right to submit that evidence, and the village board can consider that, whether or not you want to spend that money on an appraisal and go forward or not. And I can reach out to the village attorney as well and keep in touch with him and see how things are going forward. Again, he said he anticipated this to be, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be a continuing process of the parties working together. So that's something we can do, is continue to go forward and see how that's going, if that process is moving.
I'm curious if Drew, if you guys have gotten your appraisals done yet, and if so, what are the values that you're getting? Are you seeing from Roanoke or from your own?
The village did not order a new appraisal of it, so I don't have that number in front of me. And the Roanoke number was considerably lower than.
Current is 584. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was. And to be honest with you, they didn't interpret the ordinance correctly when they generated their number.
So the bottom line is, when we've got our two experts here tonight, one of the bottom lines is we have to come through with what the impact may be, and that's something we'll all be working on. Number two, and I think I'm going to speak, our recommendation is not to spend the excess money to do a study, but it's still we feel very important to bring it to the board for a final decision on, do you want to hire an outside company for $20,000 to $25,000 to go through and get a different estimate on what the value of an acreage of land, developed land, right?
It calls out about utilities being present, curb. I mean, it spells out expressly what's required. This to be declared a 1 acre.
And there is a second number coming, right? You've got the Roanoke number and
the village will, and the board will have to decide what that number is, right? They could ask for a certified appraisal, see a number, say, we don't like that either.
Sure,
we're
sure.
going to stick with current.
But it gives you a baseline or whatever.
Right. But I mean, it's the curse of the existing, I don't know if you are with the existing planned residential development agreement and the impact fees associated with that. I don't know if you recall that. But that was
unreasonable?
Well, it's unbelievable to us. I mean, the reality of having, at the time when the original development was approved, to have an age restriction for the development, yet be paying the full impact fees.
I actually, I wouldn't mind.
Of course not. That's right. We'd be on that third helicopter right now. But the I mean, that's just unbelievably, and obviously may or may not have played into the financial dynamics of why that was, besides all the other local bursting, but it's just unrealistic to think that could be done.
So we, certainly ask them any questions. We will be continuing to update, and certainly let us know tonight if you're interested in securing one of these studies. I don't see everybody jumping up and down, but now's your time to speak up if you want to do that.
I think if the village is doing it, and they have the same interests as us, so I think it's going to be doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I would not be inclined.
Unless there's some real benefit, which I'm not sure, I don't see.
Well, it's a benefit to everyone. Number one, I mean, I would be interested in knowing what the incremental, what the delta is between the two analysis with respect to impacting the school district. Are we talking hundreds of thousands, or are we talking tens of thousands?
Between the increment of what the developer submitted
Yeah,
and then what our current number is?
yeah,
Oh, yeah, it's significant. Yeah.
to us.
It's
Well,
very, it is.
So there's one thing to think about too, is that the way the number, there's a couple major variables. One is obviously the value of one impact, one value, the value of 1 acre of land. The other is the number of bedrooms, right? So the prior development had 85 units, an associated bedroom count with that. This has 98, right? So the impact, 98 units total, so that the impact is going to be higher based off of the higher bedroom count. So there's going to be, if the value goes down,
Yeah, but you get the height, but also
yes,
the
right,
process.
so there's something there.
So there's several variables,
Correct.
but the bedroom count is fixed. That's not subject to.
Well, it's not even fixed. We don't know until it's built, right? You come and do a custom home. Well, I was going to build a 3-bedroom, now it's 5. So you don't know. These are estimate numbers that are done based off what we know today, based off assuming, typically we assume a scenario which benefits the interested parties, and those being the local agencies. We're assuming that they're going to build out a certain sweet spot which generates the highest impact.
Yeah.
And everything goes according to schedule. When would the first occupancy be? 2016 sometime?
Yeah, the developer had talked about, he wanted to get and started turning earth this summer, if he could do it, and try to get his models done and open by, I guess, what, Super Bowl 2016.
With the Bears are in it?
Bears.
Let's hope, let's hope not.
Let's hope they don't take that long.
So, any other questions? Well, we've got our 2 experts here.
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in a little bit more information about just the order of magnitude that John was just referencing. So, not necessarily the delta, but if assume for a minute that the 584 were to hold, I don't. What does that translate into for us for an impact fee?
So let's look at the current plan residential development impact fees that are on the books.
The ones from the last developer.
Correct. So
The ones
that's
that
based
were-
off 85 units using the 583.2 number. The school district was going to receive just over $450,000.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
That was for cash because there was no land,
Right.
so it was in lieu of, it was all cash.
I see. Okay.
And what would, if the new appraisal is considered significantly lower, I assume that it is, correct? You had 2
For the
different.
developer?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
What would our impact fees be under that condition?
A lot less.
A lot less.
Oh, I know that. I mean, how much
Is
are
it-
we talking about?
If the
100 grand?
Oh, no, I'd say at least, probably maybe a third of that. I mean, just.
the
difference is
Third of
that
100 or third of?
The net.
Is what we would
The
get, the
the
net.
remaining.
the net is like
A third.
$33,000.
Yeah.
A third of.
Third of
No, a third of-
Oh, sorry.
So
When you said 100, I want to know.
Yes.
Is it a straight line between the 584? That if it's half of that, then we get half as much? Is there a straight correlation, or is it
No,
is the formula not that
But don't forget,
direct?
there's also a change in the number of bedroom counts, right? So that's going up,
Yeah. Okay.
which we don't know what the actual number is going to be.
Okay. So the formula includes lots of other things rather
The
than
biggest
just biggest variable.
is
Yes.
the value.
I get it.
So the value of the other assessment was 1/3 the initial value that was created? That's what you just said.
pretty close.
That's considerable spread.
Yeah.
Two different
Consider the
sections.
source.
Yeah.
So, and again, and again, I'm not trying to, because the board hasn't had this conversation, but they didn't interpret the ordinance correctly.
Okay. But we now have some sense of,
Potential worst case, I suppose, is one way.
and is that all one time? Is that over the course of years?
One time.
It's a one
Well, you know, it can be either or.
Depends on.
The idea of the ordinance, as was stated earlier, our ordinance calls out for an escrow to be held for 10 years,
I see.
drawn upon based on the impact. And I've never seen it done in any town before. And the idea is that most of the time developers want to get cut loose and say, go for your number.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with time and money.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, and the cost, if we're primarily looking at bricks and mortar, is going to be up front. I mean, by that 2019 date. It's interesting to me, looking at it from the beginning of 2015, and understanding we could literally have all those kids in whatever configuration they come, right? It could be all first graders for all we know, whatever.
That's true.
It won't, but we don't know that. So we're here at the beginning of 2015, assuming that they'll all be living here by 2019. And it kind of takes a while for a school district to build some new classrooms or whatever. So I'm glad we have the communication going, and we need to keep that up. It'll take us a little bit to do that.
Just think, James, your kids could be in that neighborhood.
Some are.
I got some younger ones.
How many do you have again?
I have 4 kids, 6, 7, 9, 12.
He's a great candidate for our school district. Well, thank you both. We appreciate
That
it.
was very helpful.
James, I look forward to working with you on both the line for our facilities use and our impact fee discussion. So,
Great, thanks everybody.
thank you
Thanks,
both.
James. Nice to meet you.
We really appreciate it.
Is there more you need from us tonight?
Nope.
All right, so we get back to our agenda, which I'm very.
Me too, so hold on just a second. We're back on budgeting
So we
contingencies.
killed off G, and we're back to E for budgeting contingencies. Now, if everybody recalls, when Emily McBain spoke on behalf of Alliance, there was an issue about a curricular item that the Alliance decided to fund that may or may not have been an appropriate funding item for them, and maybe we should have picked it up. But because we hadn't perhaps defined the way we budget contingencies as clearly as necessary, that has resurfaced, and we need to have that conversation to make that more clear about how we're going to handle things that we didn't anticipate but are deemed worthwhile in the future.
I think I'm going to start out, and then I'm going to give the floor to Jay. This year we really have, and we are currently working on planning ahead for budgeting purposes. And what that means is, first of all, our staff is great. They're frugal. They have been very cost conscious. But we've been working very hard with them to think ahead. So when purchases come up, is this something planned for it for next year? We'll order it, and it can be in next year's budget. We've really concentrating on staying to the budget this year, keeping in mind that there always may be emergencies. And obviously emergencies we would handle, and Jay can move funds around if he needs to. But we've really been trying to stick with it this year, and I think that's important for the staff in their planning and in our budgeting cycle. Jay, you want to take over from that point?
Sure. Well, I think we talked about really how we want to handle discretionary expenses. Non-discretionary expenses, I think some examples were snow removal, special education students moving to the district, things that we just have to spend, and we have no other choice. What Gene was talking about was trying to instill in the staff the thoughtfulness and planning for the year. So if there's something that they anticipate needing to upfront plan for it in the budget, if it's not in the budget, then to wait until the following year when we can have the funds and plan for it in the following year. When managing any budget, you track it over time, and I mean, as we said, the budget is a plan, and the plans, best of plans always change, and we can't anticipate everything, but you have to monitor your budget over the course of the year, and then as things become more clear and as things firm up towards the end of the year, if you can identify areas that you expected to spend but didn't, and free up money and shift some things around, you may be able to support those other projects in whatever priority you determine. We kind of said first half of the year, we're just going to stick to our guns and not buy anything extra because we don't really know. As you get into the fourth quarter and you see maybe I didn't spend it where I was expecting to and we've got extra surplus, then you could start entertaining things that were nice to haves that were of higher priority. Because the opposite could be true. You could be overspent and you could have to cut things, or in order to make your final numbers, maybe not purchase some things you even planned to spend because of some of those other must spends that came up that you didn't foresee. So in managing your budget, at least for the first half a year to 3/4 of the year, I think the philosophy or the plan was to be very strict and to not, because there's lots of requests, and you could say, looking at one individual, it's $400, it's $1,000, it's not that much, but once if you don't set a firm rule, then you start to get 10 of those and then it starts to add up. So I think that's how we were looking at managing things.
My thinking on it was, I know your point is very well taken about a $400 expense there, $400 expense, before you know it, you're looking at $10,000 worth of requests. Is maybe these things, I don't think they should come directly to the board. I think they should go to Gene, and you guys make the decisions, or make a recommendation, maybe quarterly, or set some increment of time, like some interval every half a school year, or some, what do you do, semesters, or at the school, or trimesters?
Yeah, but we are just now at a point, just this month, that we could start looking to say what have we spent and what we haven't spent. I think another big factor that's going to play into this is as Jay gets more and more used to the accounts that we have and the generating the monthly and weekly reports, because we've been using Skyward a lot more than we've used in the past.
What is Skyward?
Skyward is our financial management system. All of our requisitions go through there. We see all the accounts. I approve everything. As he's getting everything through the Skyward program, the reports are more regular. He sees it's easier for us to say we can switch money around and do some other things. But we get a lot of requests for different curricular supplements and different things that really would be nice to have and would be great to use this year. But we have a budget, and we're really trying, all of us, including myself, are trying to plan out and say, what do we need this year? What do we need to save to do next year? And so I think that those are key factors in there.
Just to add to that, so this discussion really started, I went back to the board minutes. August 26th, the board meeting then, we were directed by the board to develop a budget with no contingencies. And the way that the administrative team took that was that we were to develop a budget for exactly what we needed and what we could reasonably project that we would be purchasing. What that means then is that when people come to us with requests like this, though many of them are outstanding, we have one right now where we have a higher number of students who want to attend this Students in Technology Conference, so it will end up costing the district $800. That's not money, again, that we budgeted, and I don't want to go as far to say that our budgets are that tight that we are really worrying about $800, but that's the sort of thing that comes to us on a day-to-day basis.
Every day.
And so to say to Gene, Gene will constantly be reviewing them, then that puts Gene in the position of constantly having to say, unless the board directs us differently, well, the board has directed us to budget for no contingencies. It's not in the budget currently, so let's hold off on it until the future.
Can we get around that issue by establishing a slush fund as part of the budget? So we have a certain amount, $5,000, whatever set aside, with the understanding being that the administration will use its discretion throughout the year to allocate that to the best requests that come in. It's not really a contingency then, but
Well,
It's a known unknown.
Well, there's actually a line you can put in your budget. There's a state account called contingency, and that's what it is.
But if you don't use the word contingency, whether it's a corporate budget or a school budget or a public municipal budget, when you anticipate your needs, you look at the full spectrum of what's required. If I were I was in a position at one time where I was selecting curricula, I would determine what my needs were, and then I'd sort of say, well, maybe I'm going to need some supplemental materials and some AV materials and whatever, and I'm going to add another $500. That's not a contingency, that's an expectation that I have, that's planning. So I hate the word contingency or miscellaneous or whatever, but it seems to me that you think through what the requirements are, and then you say, but there may be some other things that are coming on. And most teachers, I know when I was teaching, I knew what the publishers were preparing. I was in touch with them. I knew what the curricula was, at least when I was teaching.
And that's the only thing that's probably changed, John, because literally curriculum changes daily now.
But you can still,
Every day there's new supplements.
okay, so then you know that, and you can hopefully anticipate it to a certain extent, not completely. So you're not adding 25%, you're making a realistic guesstimate about what the requirements are, and you live with that. And maybe it's 10% more than you would have put in a no contingency budget, but it is what you were expected.
Another way of looking at it is you could, perhaps not worth the trouble, but you could go back the last 5 years and say, what did we spend each year that was not in the original budget? Oh, last year it was $10,000, and the year before that it was 15, and then the year before that it was 12. So what we know from prior experience is that we know each year we spend $12.5 thousand on unknowns. So we don't know what those things are each year. We know that each year our experience has taught that we need $12,000 for emerging equipment.
I absolutely agree with you. The challenging part about where we were at the beginning of the school year is that we have been directed by the board, and Jay was specifically hired to really tighten some things up. We've not had those numbers. So basically,
This is our first year with it.
basically, if somebody came to ask for something to be purchased, then we purchased it.
Yeah,
Whether it was in
that's
the budget
been
or not.
Well,
And so
and in
we
the
can't,
past, we over budgeted for everything, so it never came up.
that's
So
exactly it.
just
And
turn
so
it back in
we
and-
don't have 5 years of history to go back and say, this is how much we spent outside of the budget, because budgets were quote unquote.
We don't have, this year is the first
Yeah.
time we have data for that.
So
Well, now we have it for this year.
are you guys making a recommendation on
No.
any of those?
We've got it, we really feel comfortable with what we're doing.
With having the no contingency and.
If we're gonna have no contingency, my own philosophical is that we should be planning ahead. And see, like John, I don't call it contingency either. If I'm doing my planning, I say, okay, I need this, this, and this, and, generally I spend $1,000 more in this area. I don't know what it'll be on, but this is what I need.
And
my budget
I would say that's still a no contingency budget.
Right.
It is budgeting for something that we can't line item what that something is, but we know our experience teaches, whether it's data or it's back of the envelope or in the back of your mind, experience teaches that each year there will be something that we will need to develop.
And I don't call that contingency though. I call that just planning for what I believe is gonna come up in my budget for that year.
And maybe we went, we were the experience of adding over $1 million a year to our surplus, to the point where it got to 16 million. Maybe we reacted a little too strongly the first year, but that's experience. So take that with the upcoming year, given the fact that we need to project a little better and understand a little better.
Plus, I also think you're, for the first time, in the position where you calculate your revenue and figure out what you're going to get, and then you calculate the expenses that you don't have any control over and see what's left.
Right.
And what's left is not maybe enough to cover everything you want or everything that would be nice to have, because between salaries and benefits and special ed costs and things like that, we levied what we needed, and now we're just going to get a little bit more each year, and our costs are going to go up faster than our revenue. So there's not this big pot of money, and we can also have negative surprises that we have to be prepared for because we don't have $1 million cushion. So because I'm new especially, I'm not really comfortable yet with how we're doing. I haven't really had a chance to track our expenses closely, and I couldn't tell you right now, how much money we are on the budget one way or the
Yeah,
other.
but in reality, we're still above the maximum that we dictated for our fund surplus. We're over the maximum that we set for ourselves. I know where you have some plans. We have some earmarks that haven't been designated so far, so it's a little premature. So it's not like we're...
No, we're not going to run out of cash, but I just, especially in my first year, don't plan on not hitting my budget. I don't want to be that.
Well, is that
Right.
a mandate? Though?
Generally, you don't want to overspend.
Well,
I mean, the cash is there, but we were pretty specific. I would be very surprised if anyone came with a recommendation to spend any of it, right?
spend the surplus?
Surplus, yeah.
What's in the reserve?
Well, until we understand what the requirements are going to be
Yeah.
for the middle school.
But it shouldn't really, I feel like if I'm understanding it, you're going to get feedback about what you ought to be doing to keep our curriculum in a really great place. You're going to get that information on a constantly changing basis, on a daily basis. And if you found out today that you needed to do something to change the curriculum for next year, you'd have to get it now.
Right.
To even have a hope of having people train and having the materials here for next year.
We've still
So it
done
really
it with
doesn't-
a lot less time. It just adds that much more stress on the teachers.
But it's not a wise use
It's
of
not.
your time or your stress,
You're-
that doesn't
you are
make sense to me.
Correct. One example of that is some of the technology purchases that we would look to make. So if, hypothetically speaking, we were to change technology platforms for next year, I would want to send teachers home over the summer with a new device so that they could learn it over the summer, so that they could start to use it. Well, we haven't really budgeted for every teacher to get a new device this year. That would come in next year's salary or pot. And so there's those sorts of things come up, and our tendency up until this point has been to say no to pretty much everything except for the emergencies.
Okay, but I thought I heard Jean say that you're comfortable with how it is, but I'm not hearing that you're comfortable with how it is.
We're comfortable because we've set up our system, but I think as we communicate it, I think how we read it is how, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this. I think we read it as, how I said I spend 1,000, but I know that I might have an extra 1,000 that I normally spend every year. We didn't plan for that extra 1,000. that we
Well, that's
spent
the
because-
error. I mean, that's the
I don't know if
oversight.
that's error. I think
It's
they were pretty clear
contingency.
enough.
I wasn't blaming it on
Oh,
anybody. That's the
So I think that
Oversight.
oversight.
responsibility.
Right, that we weren't clear. I mean, I never intended to take every ounce of discretion away from the administration. And that's what was
we
shocking
took
to
that
me.
directive very, very seriously. We're down, we sharpened our pencils, and we budgeted for exactly what we knew we needed this year.
Including what you expected that wasn't anticipated.
No.
Well, see,
That's-
that's,
that's
I think we
very
have,
nice.
I think the definition of budgeting is what we're debating here in reality, because my concept of budgeting and your concept may be different, and we need to clarify that.
So there was a literal interpretation where we may need to.
I mean, when I budget for something, I'm going to budget exactly what I need, plus I'm going to try to anticipate in a broad way what my needs might be.
And in
No,
our
because
education,
if
we
you-
call that
If we
contingency.
tell, if we tell
That's the
the,
problem.
And we don't, so.
if we tell administration that they need to plan, and then they get to the end of the year and have not spent what was planned, then there's going to be some pressure to have spent it to show that they planned and that it wasn't contingency. Whereas before, and I understand all the objections that were made about how we were doing it before, but one nice thing was, I think there was budgeted kind of a little, there was slush. But it wasn't that it was getting spent every year.
Right.
Either spend it out, then it was getting, turned back in. So maybe there's a happy medium somewhere here.
I think we can work through the happy medium because generally people, if I go to the 5th grade team and say, all right, give me what you are going to budget for next year, and then think to yourself, last year and the year before, generally how much more did your team spend? And if they say $500, then I would say put in the extra $500 then. But when we learn budgeting in schools, that for us in schools, that's contingency. Because we don't have a specific thing defined for that.
So let's not
Is
get hung up on the
there
language here.
anything
It's
we
like
need to
we're-
do now? Anything we should
No.
consider now to make this so you have the resources you need?
We have the resources that we need,
This
and
discussion was held because a board member requested it, the discussion. So.
Rough order of magnitude, how big is this gap? We're talking between what was budgeted and what you're having to,
I
what
guess
the wants are.
It's not that big.
No, I mean, the item we talked about was.
It's not that big.
$2,000.
I call it cush, but
Okay.
the better way of calling it is planning. And here's what I would tell you, the way that it's done in the past, here's where you need to be very impressed. Anytime the teachers asked for something in the past, they were given it. It was purchased. And our teachers, and I've been in several districts, our teachers are extremely frugal. They will go to 10 different stores to get something at the cheapest price. They're very thoughtful. We've all commented on that. So, I think that teaching and working through the additional thing that we're all working on, planning. Let's plan, let's be conscious of what we're spending. That's not a bad message to send.
But,
So-
and I guess what I want to leave this conversation with is the expectation that the administration has the authority to exercise discretion over these decisions. That we didn't, by setting a budget, say there will be no more spending unless it's life or death emergency. We said we're trying to budget as closely as possible to what we reasonably expect we will spend.
And let's also recognize that there's a communication gap. I mean, we use the word contingency thinking we all know what we were talking about, and administration is hearing something different.
Yeah, I agree.
And we have to be more cognizant of those differences going forward in not just finances, but in anything we might be talking about. Maybe we need to change the words we use. I mean, I'm flexible. I don't have to call it.
We can change different words too. I think it's just different,
I
different ways
would
to
like to
plan.
know what the emerging costs are. I know that there are no easy ways to decipher this, but what do we reasonably think we spend each year on things that are new?
Well,
The
this year we
budget
couldn't do it.
Not a known expenditure at the beginning of the budget year, but something that's
So-
emerging.
But what I think I hear you say is that you would like for us to have the discretion to say, it's not currently budgeted for. We need to see where we're at in March, later on in the budget year. If there's money for that in the budget in March, then we will purchase that. And if not, then we will attempt to budget for it in the coming.
Here's the other thing I'd like to know before the next budgeting session. If you had all the money you could have to buy whatever you weren't able to buy, how much
What would
would you need? What's
Yeah,
the,
like
what's the
how much
difference?
is the technology?
I'd like to know that. So if you were able to fulfill all the requests that came that you couldn't fulfill,
We
I'd
can
like to know.
guesstimate.
It doesn't have to be, it can't be exact, obviously, but I'd like to know what that number would be.
Yeah.
Not now, but when we get ready to
Because
budget.
I bet we'd be willing to build most of that into
Right.
the budget and be completely comfortable.
Right, right. A
Right?
slush
It's
fund,
just
exactly.
this
Yeah.
ill-defined, let's budget as much as we can get under the tax base concept that we moved away from.
Well, it's silly to have Alliance doing that. I'd
Exactly.
rather have them buying violins or
But now,
whatever.
here's another example, and Jay mentioned it. We budgeted for, how many kids did we budget for the students in technology?
62.
62, and they want to bring an additional.
They want to bring 88, I think.
So one of the ways we can pay is we could just pay for it. I'm going to tell you, with all the clubs now we have, if we pay for one, we have a lot of clubs. So, and that's definitely something that we could go to the Alliance for, because that's what they do. They support kids and different things, especially, I'm going to tell you, with these new clubs, our kids are going to wind up going to nationals. We have smart kids, so be prepared for that now. But, you know, this particular, we could go ahead and pay for it, but it's also a great expense for the Alliance, because that goes along with their mission. And
Well, what about the parents? I mean, you talk about the user pays for what they particularly need. That, as a parent of a middle-aged school child, I would tell you I would pay such a fee if my child were going to go to some special event. So I think that might be an appropriate place to consider too, to cover those costs.
this one, I think it's free to the kids, isn't it?
No, it's $25 per attendee, plus the buses.
So it already has a fee for the kids.
I don't remember seeing that.
And we balance all that. So, you know, I think it's just, we're tightening things up and we're working through things, but I would also tell you, in our world, things truly change daily. And so all it takes is for a teacher to see something that's come up and they talk about it with their team. Kelly, you see it every day with all the different subjects that we have. There are so many things that can help kids on a daily basis that, you know, we have to start planning. And it gets back to, John, what you said. I usually spend $500 more, so I'm going to put that $500 more, so I have leeway to do
It'd
that.
be interesting to know how much that total amount is too. Because ultimately we can, getting back to the fees, we increase all those fees by $2 and we probably cover everything. Or $5. I mean, it's that simple. You know, we're talking, I bet we're talking about under $30,000.
Yeah.
So you go back to that number.
I would say it's more than that.
Well, let's see what it is, but once we see what it is and we get ready to budget, we
Yeah.
can, we can look at alternatives.
Whether we do it in the planning piece or we have a slush fund, and there, as Jay said, there's actually a line on the budget but it's called contingency, because that's what we call it in education. So.
Emerging curriculum
Requirements.
requirements. Emerging, not emergency, emerging.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to summarize your takeaway from this?
My-
What are you walking away from? What are you walking away from tonight? What are you taking away out of this conversation?
My takeaway from this is that we will continue to move forward with what we're doing this year, because I think it's been a very fiscally responsible way to approach what we're doing. We talked about it today. If we're finding that funds haven't been spent, then the supervisors can go back and say, hey, you know, we have money in this account. Now you had talked to me about this curriculum enhancement. Now you can go ahead and order it. That was something we were planning on doing anyway. And I think as we approach budgeting next year, I think we need to make sure that as we discuss things, I think we need to make sure that how we talk to each other needs to make sure that we have common understanding as we budget. And then the final thing is we need to get some kind of an estimate on what we think on all the requests from this year, which we're going to have to talk to the principals on that too. How much what the difference would be. So that's what I took away.
It's not a reasonable request.
And your best guess.
Right.
Does that ring?
Did you guys
solid
get
to
everything
everybody?
else from that?
That's good.
Does that cover it?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to move on unless anybody else wants to
I have a
beat
suggestion.
that one to death even more.
I have a suggestion with budget, or with the policies, and it's up to you. We're actually ahead on these policies, so we can either go through them, or we can.
All in favor
Or
of
we can do the
postponing
first
the
reading.
discussion on policies to the...
We could do the first read at the next board meeting.
I support
do
that.
that.
All in favor?
Yeah,
I thought I'd get opposition to it. No.
I've been here, I've been talking school since 3:45. Toast. Oh, we gotta go to closed session after this. Oh,
Yeah,
but it'll
that
be
should
brief.
be-
It's really brief. There's nothing.
In fact, my vote is we stay here to do it,
Okay.
so
said to turn TV on.
So do we
You
need a
just-
motion to go into closed session?
Yeah, we do. So we're done with budget, right, item F. So item F, the discussion of policies will be postponed to a subsequent meeting. And now may I have a motion?
I forgot to ask if there's public comment again.
That's true.
There's
If
not.
anybody would like to address the board, please do so now.
I have to remind them.
Seeing none, I will move on. And let's see, second page, closed session. I need a motion to move that the Board of Education enter into closed session to discuss collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Okay, Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Hay.
Yes.
John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Wright,
Yes.
Mark Gray.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we are in closed session. Thanks,
So
guys.
here's what we need to do then. We have, Kelly, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Terry gets to go home, and we're just gonna close the doors, and we're just gonna do closed session up here then, because it'll be short and no one needs to go anywhere then.
Are we offline?
We gotta wait.
We gotta wait for
We
them.
gotta wait for these other guys to go, so if anybody has to go to the bathroom or anything.
Now's a good potty break time if we need one. Can you hit that door over there? Thank you for getting us dinner tonight, Terry.
Yes, thank you.
That'll be 2 cubes. I've been kidding her about that man bun thing. 2 cubes in my cocktail. You were there.